welcome to Sunday Brunch. I'm your host, Gina, and today is just me. I thought we would spend some time talking about a few things that I'm a bit of an expert in, and that is human resources, HR, and getting jobs and things like that. So I thought I'd be able to share some information with you guys and be able to help you a little bit with navigating your current workspace and even finding a new job. So today we'll be discussing those things. So let's get started because I have a few listener questions and I want to read them for you and give my insight. So first letter we have here is this statement is I am on unpaid suspension and my employer is still investigating the situation. I still may be fired. I never said or did anything to anyone. It was I was talking to another coworker and someone was listening in range. I'm unsure if I will lose my job. If I do, what is the information that needs to be communicated to my new employer, both from me and my current / possible old employer? I have to refer them. I have worked there for 7 years. Okay, so one thing is I rarely see a situation where someone is suspended for absolutely no reason. And you could possibly be suspended for something you said to someone else, especially if it was considered inappropriate. And a lot of places do this nowadays where they do suspension before they make a determination whether or not they want to terminate employment. This isn't rare. It's pretty common practice nowadays, and that's really just so that it gives the associate a chance to really think about what is going on, be able to state their case, and then it gives the employer a chance to really investigate before terminating someone, making sure they have all the ducks in a row and they have just cause to terminate. Because a lot of times things come out later when they do some research. So they're investigating. This is also your chance to give them your statement. You have a right to, as to what happened. It gives you your side, and also make sure whatever you give them, it's clear, it's thorough, and that information is going to be used when it comes to, if you do get terminated, getting your unemployment or fighting for your unemployment, if you deserve it. What's really important during this time is to think about what you said. Because you were around other people, just doesn't mean you might not talk to that person in particular. What you said to that person can be inappropriate for work, or again, in violation of what is in your handbook or policy within that property. They have every right to suspend you if you are in violation of something that's in policy. When it comes to what information has to be communicated to your next employer, most companies stay away from giving anything outside of the position, rate of pay, and time of length of working there. I would find out for sure from that company what they normally do when they're asked for information. Of course, if they give out more information than necessary, then that can put them in hot water if it does have an adverse effect on you, and you do have recourse for that if you feel that what they're saying is incorrect or invalid. So I would certainly double check with the employer if you are terminated, finding out for sure what information they release. My guess is whenever you get let go from a place, I say honesty is the best policy. If you know you violated the policy, then admit it, or just say you were let go, and then let the next employer ask for further information. My guess is honesty is the best policy, because if they call and they find out something else, or for whatever reason they find out from someone else the truth, they're not going to like it. I'm not going to like it. If people tell the truth to me, they're misleading to me, then I tend not to like it. And I don't want to hire someone who's not going to tell the truth. If the information that they give back is not accurate or does have an adverse effect on you, like I said, you do have the right to research that out and find out what's going on. But I think you need to be more clear about what the violation was, because if it's because of sexual harassment or something extremely severe, and you're being honest with people and telling people I got let go because of a sexual harassment violation, they're not going to be likely to hire you. So good luck. See, I have another letter here. The topic is, can anything be done about a coworker abusing FMLA leave? One of my coworkers takes intermittent FMLA leave due to her child, but takes at least twice, probably more like 3 times the allotted 12 weeks off. She says she works from home enough to make up the difference, but it's evident that she's only putting in from half an hour to a couple of hours on these days, and it's often from 10 to 12 p.m. Everyone else on the team is required to work their 40 hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. She is best friends with her manager, and so the manager ignores and even sometimes tries to cover up what's actually happening. So I guess my question is, what can I do about this? My position is such that I am supposed to work very closely with her, and her extreme absenteeism is impacting my work and my deadlines. But luckily, I do not report to the same manager. I have been considering calling the ethics hotline, but no, I'm not sure what would happen. Okay. Of course, you can call the ethics hotline if you feel it's necessary to do so and let them investigate. But honestly, I tell this to people all the time, is if it doesn't have to do with you, it's really none of your business. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's the truth. What FMLA the fact that she's even on FMLA, it's really not any of your business. Now, of course, aren't like a whole lot of laws that protect people's privacy at work, things like that. It's not laws, but more like ethical guidelines. And for me and my property, like where I work, I do not give out that information. It's basically not your business. And if you feel it's adversely affecting your work, her not being there or her work, then what I would suggest is going to your manager and saying, hey, so-and-so is not helping me. I know like she hasn't been here and her work isn't coming in on time and is affecting me, and bring it to the manager's attention and asking them for help and letting them help you come up with a solution. FMLA, and in particular intermittent FMLA, is tricky. It's hard to navigate sometimes, especially with some of the laws have been changed recently. So what you think you know isn't always what you know. The fact that she doesn't have to release that information to you, she doesn't report to you, and you don't have the full story. You just see what you see. And a lot of times people assume what they see is the whole story and they have all the information, and they don't, and they're not well versed in it. So as I said, like the situation with FMLA, it's not your concern, it's not your business. You need to focus on what is your business, and that is getting your work done. And if you're having difficulty getting your work done because of her, then as I said, you bring it up to your manager and tell them, look, what am I supposed to do? I need your help. And then let the managers work it out. Of course, if you're trying to get something done and it's constantly impacting it and they try to fix it and it's not helping, and then I would certainly escalating it and taking it to the next level and documenting like, hey, I'm trying to get my work done. I can't do it because of this, that, and the third. But trying to find out who's abusing FMLA, that's just you being nosy and you're making an assumption. Next topic. Can an employer write me up for not saying hello? Can an employer write me up for 1, not saying hello to a coworker or a boss, 2, not saying Happy Easter to a coworker or a boss? Yes and no. The first one, yes, an employer can document you for not saying hello if that is part of their policy. If they believe being polite and being cordial and saying good morning and saying hello is part of their policies, as part of their procedures, and you do not do so, then you will be in violation of that. And honestly, like, I don't see why you wouldn't say hello. It's rude behavior, and a lot of companies do have rude and discourteous behavior clauses in their associate handbooks. So I just say hi. It's not really going to kill you to say hello. And besides the fact that it makes for more comfortable work environment, and it does make for a hostile work environment when people can't say hello to each other. But they're not saying Happy Easter is not something that I would suggest if someone write you up for, because it has to do with religious preferences and whatnot. The fact of the matter is the company can choose to write you up for whatever they feel is in violation of their policies. However, certain things are like frowned upon, and certainly Happy Easter and religious preferences. Easter is a religious holiday. If you don't celebrate it, then why should you have to say Happy Easter? Now, if for whatever reason, let's say the company, if let's say the company is a Christian-based organization and they celebrate Easter for clients and they expect you to say it to the clients, then they can certainly find some way to say that's part of the language and not really a religious thing. But in terms of saying it to your coworker and boss, I really can't see that holding any water. But like I said, when it comes to documenting things, they kind of have the right to document for whatever is a violation in the handbook, and they feel you're being rude, then that is certainly a violation. Okay, next letter, employee confidentiality. Hi, I was recently suspended from my job with pay for unknown reasons for an indefinite period of time. My HR manager does not know why or has not been informed as to why. However, a coworker informed me that she knows why. Should not the HR manager be the only employee that should know why I have been suspended and not any other coworker? Is that a violation of my employee rights? Okay, really no such thing as employee rights. I don't know where a lot of these things people think are laws, they just kind of make them up. More or less they come from the fact that, people have appropriate guidelines, ethics issues, and things like that are considered appropriate in the work environment, but they're not really employee rights. There's more or less, there are laws when it comes to employment law, and that really doesn't coincide with employee rights. But anyway, no, it's not a violation of employee rights. That might be a violation of your company's confidentiality clause. However, I do like to let people know that, things don't happen in a vacuum. The fact of the matter is if something happened enough where you're going to get written up for it, likelihood it came to the HR person, so someone else knows. And when you work around other people, people see things, people know things, and people spread information. And some of it is accurate and some of it is not. So your coworker may not have the real story as to why you're suspended. They may just be guessing or conjuring, or just someone, rumor mill, they guessed and figured it out or made it up. The fact of the matter is just because they think they know and they told you doesn't make it true. Also, the fact of the matter is if you did something in violation and someone told the HR person or someone told somebody so that you got suspended, then that means someone else knows. And if someone else knows, then they probably told somebody else. And HR, as hard as we try to control those things, it's very difficult. People talk and people share information. People see things, and we just can't make the stuff stop existing. It does. To one point, I don't understand is how you got suspended and you don't know why. I find it hard to believe that someone says, "Oh, you're suspended with pay, and we're not telling you," or "Okay, and I'm just gonna leave." Rarely does that ever happen. I don't know if you're sharing the information truthfully, what really happened, or if you were just not paying attention or not listening. I do find it hard to believe that someone would choose to suspend you and then not inform the HR person. However, we don't know. I don't know the structure of your job or who reports to whom. A lot of times, HR people, they work off site. They have people that they report to. Sometimes information comes from corporate offices and is trickled down depending on the severity. So I'm not sure the length of time in which you wrote this and what the time in which you were suspended, that these things happen. So that's my information. Is be patient. Wait for her to do her investigation and then give her a couple of days and find out for sure what happened. But I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that your coworker knows what happened, because it might not be true. I don't listen to gossip. A lot of times it's good to have that information just to know it, but don't say that that's the truth because you don't know if it's the truth or not. Okay, another letter. I received a written 30-day warning. Can I be fired prior to 30 days? I received a 30-day written warning for performance issues. Can I be terminated for these issues prior to 30 days, or do they have to give me 30 days to improve? I know they are going to terminate me, and since I have never been fired before, I would like to quit before the 30 days for the sake of my resume. Thank you. Well, yes. Then the short answer is yes, you can be terminated before the 30 days are up. The 30-day warning is more for you to get your stuff in line, my assumption is. And if within those 30 days you make a mistake, or if you screw up, or your performance does not improve, then they don't have to wait till 30 days. They're just giving you up to 30 days to get it all together. So if you are doing great and then on day 28 you screw up, then they can let you go. It's more or less if you do great for those 30 days and on day 40 you don't do so great, then they might revisit the situation. But it really comes down to the fact is, yes, you can be let go. But it's only if you don't improve. If you have no intention of improving, then you might just want to cut your ties now so they don't let you go. And you could just say you resign and move on to something else. But if you honestly think it's something that can be improved upon, if you're having performance issues, just fix them. If it's not fixable, then you need to move on to another position. But if it is fixable, ask for help. They gave you a 30-day written warning with the performance issues laid out. My hope is what things that you need to work on it. It's just that simple. Next letter. What to do if I'm being paid less than employees I supervise? I work at a small company founded by the current CEO. I have been with the company the longest and helped develop core services of the business. I work closely with the CEO on a day-to-day basis and manage all internal operations. We recently hired 2 employees about 6 months ago. I am their supervisor and have more responsibilities. However, I recently discovered that I'm making $10,000 less than one and $15,000 less than the other. What should I do? Okay, so I don't know how you came about the information that you did. Rates of pay are usually, should be kept confidential. And even when it comes to sometimes, unless the manager is involved in the conversations with negotiating wages and all that for their subordinates. But in this situation, it's clear that you're a supervisor, but you weren't. So you weren't involved in their hiring or their wage negotiations. So I'm not sure how you came about this information. If you came about it illicitly, which means you snuck and saw information that you weren't supposed to, I would suggest not doing anything or saying anything right off how you came about the information. Certainly don't tell them that you know, because you could risk losing your job. If you heard about it from somebody who heard about it from somebody else, is how much they make, it's rumor mill, don't go by it. Like I said, I don't listen to he said, she said, especially when it comes in the workplace, because people make things up, people hear things, people assume things, people get things screwed up. So if that's the case, that's how you found out about it, then I wouldn't mention anything either. At least not mentioning how much people make, because a good manager, a good boss is not going to tell you what that person makes. If the person is doing their job correctly, they'll be like, well, that's none of your business, in nicer words than what I said. Now, if you came about it like doing your job, let's say you had to run payroll that week, or you did something and you saw that what their rate of pay was, then you were naturally going to see it. Then that's certainly something that you would have came about, and then I wouldn't mind telling your manager. Then that's how you came about that information. You might rub them the wrong way on how you do it. Now, if you feel that you should be paid, more because of what you do, then that should be the issue. It should not be the issue that they should be paid less than you. My assumption is if you weren't involved in their wage negotiations, you probably weren't involved in their hiring, which means you probably don't know their experiences, and they might come with something that you don't have. Now, you might have more responsibilities, but they might have more skilled services, and that might be what they're looking for. If you feel that you are due an increase, then bring it to your manager, bring it up to your CEO. There's nothing going to hurt that. And the fact is, if you're as good as you say you are, and if you do all these things that you say you do, then they should have no problem compensating you appropriately. I do suggest if you're going to go to the negotiating table, come prepared. Bringing up the fact that someone makes, this much more than you and this person makes this much more than you, then you should really... you're not going to get the kind of results that you want if you come up with that. A lot of times that rubs people the wrong way. Now, if you're coming up with the fact that, hey, I manage these people, I taught them everything, I continue to do more work than them, I bring more to the table, I bring in more clients, I've organized this, I've managed that, I think I'm due this, then I can't see anyone arguing otherwise, unless, of course, what you're asking for is completely unrealistic. It also may have to come down to the fact that they have degrees, you do not. But like I said, comparing yourself to other people in terms of how much they have without having all the information certainly doesn't look good for you. But if you've like I said, the big thing is if you found out this information inappropriately by sneaking information, by, looking at things you weren't supposed to, telling anybody that's how you found out about it is not the right thing, because you could lose your job. Good luck. Next letter. Fired for a safety violation. I was recently fired, or so I thought, for sweeping an aisle past the end of the shift bell, as well as break bell the evening before. This was stated during my exit interview, and the only document I did sign was a document that explained my rights after I'd been fired. There's no document stating my violation. After I filled out my documentation with the unemployment office, I was informed the reason behind the firing differed from my former employer. The unemployment office stated my employer claimed I committed a safety violation. I never signed off or was told that I was going to be written for a safety violation. Can a company do that? Change what they tell you and claim another to unemployment? They kind of can. I'm not saying that it's appropriate or ethical or anything like that. The thing is, they can try. But ultimately is if you try to file unemployment, you have an appeals process and they have to bring out that information anyway. They can't, when it comes to the appeals process, they have to release that information. Now, of course, when it comes to the initial unemployment claim, in most states it works pretty much the same way. You fill out your paperwork, you send it in, they request the information from the employer, and if the employer is able to show just cause for termination, then the unemployment office, and if it's in line with what they deem to be a justifiable termination, then they can deny you benefits. However, if they deny you benefits, you have a long process of appeals to go through so you can get your benefits back. So they offer like all these opportunities for you to get the information out of the employer from what they told you. I don't know why you were let go and you did not get information. I always find it really important for managers to actually give that information out when they terminate people. That way people know for sure. But of course, companies work differently, especially smaller ones. They do what they want. Now, this sweeping past the end of the shift, I don't know what that means because you didn't give much detail about what you do. That might be considered a safety violation. I'm not sure. A lot of times people hear what they want when they are being let go, and they think, oh, that's why I was let go. But meanwhile, there's this whole list of things, and people focus on that one last thing, and that's all they hear. So if you don't have any documentation stating what happened, then the only way you're going to get it is by going through your appeals process. So once you get that denial from unemployment, doesn't mean it stops there. Don't get lazy. They give you all these opportunities. If you really want to know, then you can appeal, and you continue to appeal until you get a hearing, and they have no choice but to release the information. And when you have your hearing, they will give you it at that time. Of course, that won't give you a chance to fight it because you don't know what it is, but you actually have a chance to fight it after the initial appeals. It just gets a little bit more difficult. But at least when you have the information, you know why, and they have to defend it, and then you can have your chance to question them. So my advice to you is to appeal it, and that way you can find out for sure what they're using as justifiable cause for termination. Okay, next letter. I think I got screwed. In California, I was dismissed by a large nonprofit agency for poor performance. I never received a poor review or a warning in person or via email. I only received a very positive email by a manager I did not report to. I signed a paper saying I agreed to the charges when I left, but really didn't understand what I was signing as I was very nervous and confused. I received no severance, and HR hasn't responded to questions of how I go about picking up COBRA. Thanks. Okay, so, well, I'm not really sure, clearly, you signed the thing saying that you were dismissed for poor performance, even if you didn't agree to it. It all depends on how the paperwork is worded, whether or not you signed to agree to it or you signed acknowledging that they gave it to you. Just because you're signing the paper doesn't mean you agree that your performance. You're just signing to the fact that these are the things that they found. So the thing is like California, like most states, is at will. And companies can dismiss you for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have recourse in terms of getting unemployment and things like that. Because, yes, they're at will, but they have to justify their termination and be able to give proper warning. Now, if this is the first and only time you never heard anything negative, you might have a leg to stand on when it comes to filing unemployment. So that's there. Receiving severance isn't mandatory. The fact of the matter is, one, if you're terminated because of poor performance, they certainly don't have to give you severance. A lot of times severance is reserved for things that have to do with a contract or especially management positions if, things are people being laid off or let go because of downsizing, those sorts of things, they offer severance as a sorry, thank you for your work. If you're being terminated because of poor performance, you're probably not going to get severance. I don't see any company actually doing that unless they feel like, of course, it's a contract and they were required or whatever to give you severance based on the contract. As far as COBRA goes, normally you get notification of COBRA 30 days after termination. If you do not receive something, you can certainly call your insurance provider. I'm sure you still have it, and follow up with them, and they can find out what information they can provide you for the COBRA and get the information from there. I feel bad for HR people, so I kind of feel something for them. Sometimes they get, things get hectic or whatever. I don't know how long between you wrote this and how long it's been since you were terminated and how long you've been waiting. So a lot of times, give it 30 days. If you haven't received an email, call your insurance provider. Okay. Did my employer violate my rights? My employer requested a doctor's note to say that I was contagious. Did he violate the HIPAA law? Okay, love this. A HIPAA law does not apply to employers. People love to say this stuff every time, especially when it comes to anything health related. Oh, HIPAA, it's a violation of HIPAA. Employers have no obligation to HIPAA. The HIPAA law is HIPPAA. The HIPAA law is really there, and forms of I think it's called the Health Information. It's too much to remember right now, but it's really for medical providers and on that nature, people who have access to that have access to medical records. So it's really your doctor's office, nurses, some medical insurance providers, things like that are required and bound by the HIPAA law. And that's really those people who are not able to give out information. You remember you see on the medical TV shows all the time where people who are not the individual who's receiving the medical care trying to get information from the doctor, and they're like, well, I can't tell you, that's a violation of the law. They're referring to the HIPAA law. They have to keep your information strictly confidential. And even in severe situations, especially when it comes to infectious disease and things like that, they cannot tell other people. They have to report the information to the health department, who then has their set of protocol that they have to follow in terms of protecting the health and welfare of the community. But they do not have to give that information out. And if I, as an employer, request that information, I can certainly request till I turn blue. I can ask anyone I want, in a doctor's office, why are they sick for, blah, 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 but they don't have to tell me. However, companies do have the right to request a doctor's note. Either doctor's note clearing you, for that day you took off, or a doctor's note stating you're okay to go back to work, things like that. They can certainly request that and require that in order for you to come back to work. That's certainly not a violation of any law there. And that's just a protection for the company to make sure that, one, you're completely 100% and that you're not going to keel over and die while you're trying to work for them, and making sure that they're protected. Because, they might be legally bound if you get hurt or sick while working. Any other further information, if a doctor releases any other more information other than the fact that, I'm sick, or you were sick on this day, or you were seen by my office on this day, or you're cleared to go back to work with no restrictions, if they give out any other information in terms of detailed why you were sick and blah, 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 that might be a violation of the HIPAA law. However, if you're applying for FMLA, they are required to fill out that information. So they're required because FMLA is a federally guideline program to protect your employment. But that's another situation altogether, and you're voluntarily trying to use that information. So any other information other than the fact that you were seen by their office, or you were cleared to come back to work, or you cannot come back to work, those basic sources of information, the doctor is not required to give out. Now the manager can ask all day long, but it really comes down to the doctor being responsible for what information they receive or don't receive. They don't give out. If the doctor does give out information that's personal, then yes, that is a violation of HIPAA, but it's not the employer's violation, it's the doctor's. How long I should expect to wait? Okay. It's a fair enough assumption. not to know what to do. And then certainly if you're waiting for a job, it gets really nervous, a nervous time, waiting to see if you're going to interview or not. If you've just applied online and you haven't gotten a call for interview, then it's likely to believe that they're not interested after a month. It's likelihood, but not the end all be all. A lot of times, depending on how many of the applications they received, it can take a while to feed through all that information. A lot of companies, what they do is they receive the information, give it about a month, and then go through them, and then weed out the people who meet the best criteria for their position, the people who meet the best abilities, and then they weed it out that way, and then they pick their top people and start interviewing. As soon as you send an application doesn't mean someone's going to look at it right away and then someone's going to interview you right away. It takes time. Also, if there's a lot of people who are applying for it, it might take a lot of time. So I do suggest being a little patient. A month really isn't that long in the big scheme of things, especially with the amount of unemployment as high as it is right now. So be patient. That's the first thing. Now, it certainly won't help you to call HR and just ask them if they have all the information they need regarding your application. That kind of hints around the fact that you're still interested and gives you some idea of where they are in the decision-making process. They might say, well, like, oh, what's your name? And look it up and say, okay, yeah, no, we have everything that we need. You'll either receive a letter or someone will call you or whatever. So certainly be patient. And I said you can certainly call and give them an idea, but I do not suggest calling and saying, I sent an application and when am I getting an interview? Because that's really going to turn people off. So just snick around a little bit, be a little bit, I say sneaky, but be a little more coy about it and ask them if they received everything that they needed, if there's anything else they need for your application. And that they might be able to give you some information there about where you are in the application process. All right, next letter. Master's degree, but 2 felonies and no job. I'm 28 years old, I have a bachelor's and master's degree, but I have accumulated 2 felonies from the same case when I was 18 years old. I can't get a job. What options do I have? Well, yes, it is hard to find a job as a felon, especially if you're trying to look for something that has to deal with money or those sorts of things that having a background check is critical. So it's going to be a hard road for you, and it's not going to be easy. And yes, like a lot of people, they say they don't discriminate because of felonies or convictions, but a lot of companies do. So this is where it's going to come for you to really find something for you. First and foremost, always be honest, saying that you are a felon and for what reasons. A lot of times on applications, people state, oh, we'll explain an interview. Well, companies really don't want to deal with that. They want to know beforehand, before they meet you, what the issue was. And sometimes they can deal with it. Depending on whether or not what it is you'll have access to. If your felony conviction that had to do with violence, or it had to do with money, or those sorts of things, then certain companies, they're not going to have you be around people or children or things like that where they might be held liable if something happens. Now, there is a website that does help, convicted felons who are really trying to just get their lives started back over. It's called jailtojob.com, and they give a lot of great helpful information and insight. But on that site, they mention the University of Akron, I believe, their law and criminal justice program. They started this program called the expungement program, where felons can actually apply to this program, and they tried to help them sort of get their record expunged through a series of government approved steps. So I would certainly welcome you to look into that, if not just that program, but see what's in your local area. Certainly reach out to the unemployment office and see what they have. In the meantime, apply for everything. Yes, you have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, but depending on the severity of the issues of your felonies, it might really scare some people off. So depending on what you're looking for is really going to help determine where you go. But really try to seek out those programs that help people. Seeing if it's possible to get some sort of, some statement from, the government or whatever, saying that you've been without felony or conviction, or that you have some good standing. Get some great letters of recommendation. Try to really, say that, look, I've changed my life, and that's really where it's going to come into play. And even in your cover letter, that can certainly come into play as well. So good luck to you. Certainly look out for that website from jailtojob.com. They certainly give a lot of good advice for people who are trying to just get their lives started back over. Okay, so final letter. I'm graduating college. Now what? I'll be graduating from college with a BA in professional management, and I have no idea what to do next. I can't afford graduate school now. I don't really have any leads for decent jobs. I'm currently working in retail, and it makes me sick just to walk into my place of employment. I just feel like I wasted almost $60,000 on a degree and will be exactly the same place I was when I got out of high school, with no opportunities, no doors have actually opened. I just don't understand why this whole college deal is practically forced on kids when most of the people I'm graduating with can't find any jobs. Everyone keeps saying, "Why don't you do an internship somewhere?" Well, I can't. I've been on my own since I was 16, and most internships don't pay you anything, and the ones that do are not enough to survive on. I'm not sure if anyone has advice for me, but it helps just to put out there and see if someone might have something encouraging on my way. Okay, so yes, I'm sure there's this huge group of kids that are graduating college right now. This is the time that's happening, and they're like, okay, what do I do now? Well, now is not the time to start thinking about what do you do. But for those people who are preparing, like who are in college or about to get into college, this is good advice to start from. Beforehand, what should have been done is really pick a degree that you know that is going to be high income. Professional management is kind of wide range, so it could pretty much be anything. But really try to, if you're really focused on getting a job as opposed to doing your passion, then you really want to focus on something that is going to be in high demand. And right now, some of those broader degrees don't necessarily work. Unless it's paired with something a more defined master's degree and experience. So for those college students who are still in school who are thinking, you need to really start planning before you even get to your senior year what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I know it's hard to think that at 21 or 22, like, oh my God, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? But that's the time to do it. So let's say you didn't do any of that stuff. So now you're about to graduate and you have professional management. You only had your one retail job, working at, Target or wherever, Old Navy. And now you have to figure out what you're going to do. So one, you have to keep your job because you need money. But I would start thinking, so you have this professional management degree, really figure out what it is that you want to do next. How do you want to use it? Do you want to be a general manager of a store? Do you want to be a CEO one day? Really think about, where do you see yourself in 10 to 15 years? If the conditions were right, if everything was perfect and you got all the opportunities you wanted, where do you want to go? And then when you have that idea, think of what are the steps that you have to do to get there. Do you need another degree? Yeah, you can't go back to school right now, but will you eventually need to go back to your master's degree? Okay, so then I need to get my master's degree eventually. Maybe I should look at companies that offer some sort of tuition reimbursement program, and then find those programs, and then find those companies, and then start from the bottom up. Especially since you don't have, you haven't had any internships or anything like that, but you have this degree. It doesn't mean you can't start somewhere. There's always a mailroom, right? There's always an admin or receptionist position, and that's where you're gonna have to get started. Just really figure out where you want to go, and then make a list of the steps that you think would be necessary of how you get there, and then that will help you figure out a starting point. As far as internships go, you can still get internships and keep your daytime job. You just have to find those that are flexible. That way you can still keep your retail job. You know what hours you work at the retail job, or if you have an idea, and then just work around it. And certainly you went to school and worked the job at the same time, so it's certainly possible to have an internship and go to this job full time. And that's going to really help you as well. It's gonna really come down to you planning and compromising, and that's where it's gonna help you find something. Doors just automatically open because now you have this degree. It's not gonna happen. You just have to really work for it and plan it out, and it's gonna be a while till that degree actually starts to work for you. And no, this day and age in our country, a BA isn't enough. Unfortunately, it's just enough to make minimum if you want to. And even then, we're finding that there's tons of kids out there with bachelor's degrees, but they're not. It's not working for them because they have to take that next step and really focus on increasing their educational background. But really, what it comes down to is you planning and thinking about what you want that next step to be, and then starting from the ground up. So good luck. So before I bring the show to a close, there's some things for those people who are out there, like our soon-to-be college graduate. trying to find a job. Unemployment is still high. There has been some growth, but it's still high in this country. So people are out there looking. And I certainly want to prepare you all for how you can really streamline your process and how you can really be sure that you're going to get the best job that you can, given the current market. So the first is searching and applying. One, you have to really, really focus and find websites and things like that. A lot of companies don't advertise in newspapers, especially anymore. It's all about the internet. So you have to really look for sites that are have as many connections as possible to different companies and organizations. I choose to stay away from the career builders and the hot jobs because they're just too massive. Most of the time they have these fake companies that are trying to convince people that they can work from home or whatever. So really you want to find sites like, LinkedIn is a great one. It's a networking site, but they also have positions focused on, in industries. So you make sure you get your profile updated on LinkedIn, and you try to make those connections with people you know. Networking is key to really finding the next job, because people hire who they know, and if you know the right people, you might be getting good doors. People always find out about job openings before things get posted. So it's a really great way to find those people that you used to work with, find those people that you went to school with. You don't know who knows who now, and if you're connected to someone and you say, hey, I'm looking to change my career, change a job, do you know anyone, or put some feelers out there. That's really going to be the key. But there is one site that I do love other than LinkedIn. It's called Indeed.com, and it sort of merges all of the career builders and all those other websites and puts them all in one spot, and you can really focus and find jobs based on where your location is, what the industry it's in, what position specific, even salary. So it's a great website, Indeed.com. Check it out. But ultimately, when it comes to searching, you certainly want to make a plan. I'm always about planning. I'm a planner. But just don't do willy-nilly. Sit down, focus, and pick time to do it. So, an hour a day, if that's all you got, then you spend that hour a day searching constantly on the website, submitting your application and whatnot. But when you're doing, you got to commit to it. You can't be, I'm going to spend 5 minutes and that's it. No, if you really are serious about finding another job, if you really are serious about, changing your life, and then you have to give yourself that hour of devotion or whatever time you chose, but more than 5 minutes of searching. I think it's really important to find companies that you are interested in and go to those sites directly and see if they have positions. You can certainly call a lot of times now, though, because, companies are streamlining. They don't have people who are monitoring phones 24/7 or HR people that have time to sit down and tell you every single position that is open. So they have like job hotlines and things like that, and they prefer people to go to the website. And honestly, that's probably your best bet. You just have to find better ways to stand out from the crowd while going online. Keep a record of where you apply to. Applying to the same position 20 times, you are definitely not going to get the job that way. You're probably just going to get someone annoyed that way. You're filling up their inbox or whatever. So make sure that you're paying attention to what jobs you apply for and how many times you've applied. I say you apply once and that's it. Of course, if you feel like, for whatever reason you're afraid or whatever, applying a second time 6 months down the road, if the position is still open, is certainly not bad. But I don't condone or recommend applying multiple times to the same position. You're just going to be seen as spam and someone's going to delete you. If it's too good to be true, if you go onto a website and someone says, you only have to work 20 hours and we're going to pay you $3,000, I'm like, well, then most likely it's not true. Work from home scams, commission-based positions, a lot of times they're not. You really have to do your research and make sure that, like I said, if it sounds too easy, if it sounds too good, you don't need a degree and we're going to pay you $100,000 a year. It's too good to be true. So don't waste your time on things like that, spammers, scanners. Anyone who asks you for money for anything, even like when it comes to job search, we pay us $50 and we'll help you find a job. Don't waste your time. Just invest that $50 in your pocket and spend that time focusing on searching for yourself, because that's where you're going to get the best results that way. Even temp companies, like I tend to stay. I stay away from temp organizations that make you sign a contract to work with them. You have to work so many hours before you can work for another company. If you really focus on doing the job, because a lot of times companies don't want to hire the temps unless they show them something crazy, extraordinary that they can't live without. But for the most part, you're in the better bet just doing the search for yourself. If you're in desperate need, going to temp organizations are certainly not, frowned upon. But they're having just as much as a hard time as you. A company can get someone to do it for $9. Why are they going to get a temp agency to do it for $15? It just doesn't make much sense. Okay, so now you've searched and you decide you want to apply. Now, the next step is currently your resume. One, make sure your resume is up to date. Don't submit your resume if the last job you had was in 1999 and you forgot to put the latest thing on there, because then it looks like you have been out of work for over a decade. You don't want to do that. You certainly want to make sure that you've updated it, you've looked at it, make sure you have your correct phone number, correct email. Especially another thing about email, please make sure you have a professional email with your name. So, of course, my email is gina@ginanicole.com, but if you have your regular email, your name at gmail.com, your name at yahoo.com. Please don't say, bootylicious45 at, yahoo.com. No, you don't want that. It's completely unprofessional, and people don't want to send emails to those sorts of email addresses. So please make sure you create yourself a professional email address. And two, that's great for you to have a separate email address just for when you apply for jobs, just for when you have applications go out. That way, when you get a response, you can track who you sent applications to, who you sent resumes to, and what their responses are. It keeps everything in one place and doesn't get lost in spam. Make sure you use a traditional format for your resume. Don't try anything crazy, like, I'm going to stand out and use special font that looks like, no. Keep it to Times New Roman or Arial, something that people are familiar with. Try to keep the traditional format with your name, your address at the top, objective if you have one. Of course, your education, your positions and your skills, and honors and recognition. Don't put, don't try to say, I am a 25-year-old, blah, 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 and I like long walks on the beach. That's too much information. People don't want to hear all that. But certainly keep it to a traditional format. You can certainly find templates online. But Word and all those sorts of word processing programs automatically come with them. You can just use them. Focus on your accomplishments when it comes to filling out what you worked for in your resume. A lot of times people put in their job duties, and that's good too. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of times what's going to stand out is I increased revenue 50% year over year for my company. Well, wow, I want someone who comes and does that, and that will stand out on a resume before someone says, well, I just calculated the revenue. That was my role. Yes, having that in there is certainly helpful, but you certainly want to, if you have some major accomplishments, toot your own horn. There's no shame in that. Use keywords for your industry. If you know that the industry uses a certain terminology for this sort of report or this sort of task, then put it in there. It makes you sound like, one, you know what you're talking about, and two, a lot of companies use program software that search for certain words. And if they know they're looking for someone who has search engine optimization skills or SEO skills, they're going to put that in there instead of someone, I know how to search the internet. That's not going to help them. But if you put in search engine optimization, their program will pull that up. So be sure to use those sorts of keywords to help get your resume looked at. Don't give your entire job history. We don't need to know every single job since the beginning of time that you're a paper delivery boy at the age of 10. We don't need to know all that. Of course, it's going to be 3, 4, 5 pages long. Try to keep it to the most recent, the last 3 jobs that you had. Top pertinent jobs to the position, of course, if that's necessary. But unless you leave huge gaps and it looks strange, don't do that. But try to focus on the position, the most recent ones, because that really matters to people. A job you had 20, 30 years ago, we know that information is probably not fresh in your mind, and you're not really going to be able to call on that to help you with the current job. So it's really want to focus on the most recent. If you are trying to change careers, and you went from being a web designer to now you want to be an accountant, and all of your experience is web design experience, or most of your experience is that, then you're really going to need a cover letter to explain why you're changing careers. Because if someone just look at your resume and say, well, you're not you're not in this industry, you're just looking for a job. So if you really say, well, this is my passion, I love numbers, and even when I was doing this, I was also doing blah, 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 you have to explain that in the cover letter, because a lot of companies aren't going to guess that this person's looking to change their career just from your resume. And give them a little bit of help. And when it comes to the cover letter, sell yourself. Don't just say, oh, I had luck on the opportunity, and that be it. You have to tell them, like, this is why I want this job. And this would certainly help someone understand, like, just saying what you did isn't always enough. They need to know, your passion, and need to feel it. And the only way they're going to do that is through a letter that you send them as your cover letter. Try to keep it to a page. Sometimes, of course, I know it goes over to a little bit over to the second page, but a lot of, I get bored reading applications that go longer than a page. Any other further explanation, blah, blah, and that certainly goes back to not giving your full job history. But try to keep it concise and to the point. Proofread, and this goes for the cover letter too. If you submit anything, please proofread it 2-3 times. If you need to double check it again, have a friend look at it afterwards. There's nothing worse than saying that you're a writer with impeccable communication skills and impeccable is spelled wrong. Please just make sure that you show care and dedication to this resume, and the way you would show care and dedication to the job. So let's say you've submitted your resume and application, and now you've got the interview. Well, that's the final part, right? That's the home stretch for a lot of people and for a lot of positions, because there's a lot of ends there at the interview. Well, now this is time to pull out all the stops. So the first thing is do your research. Spend time focused on the company, finding out exactly what it is that they do if you don't already know. Find out how they did last year, what sort of things make them tick, what sort of things they look for in employees. You can find this easily on for a lot of larger companies anyway, online and whatnot, and just searching on their own website. But just search and do a general search of the company and try and find out through the news and what they do and how well they've done and what sort of key initiatives they've been pulling out at their company, some things that made them stand out. And it really makes you show them that you care about the company, you're interested in being a part of it for the long haul. Dress appropriately for your interview. I always keep it simple, a black suit. It never goes wrong. Anything crazy, colors and whatever like that, depending on what it is, the field that you're going for, of course, if it's fashion or if it's artsy, you certainly want to, be appropriate, but you don't want to, it to seem like you're too wild or whatever for the position. Also, might want to get a feel when you talk to them. How is this? Is this a kind of work environment? Blah blah blah. But nothing ever goes wrong when someone comes to an interview in a suit. I do have a problem when people come to an interview in a polo t-shirt. Yes, this is an interview. This is a job interview, and you, as a gentleman or a female, should be wearing a jacket. That's my only expectation. But of course, I work in a different industry where that sort of expectation has always been set. But please, just come appropriately dressed. Women, make sure your skirt's not too short if you're wearing a skirt, and make sure your shoes aren't too high if you're wearing heels. Also, make sure you can walk in your heels, because there's nothing worse than a woman walking in 6-inch stilettos and it looks like she just learned how to walk in them yesterday. There's nothing wrong with you wearing flats there if it's okay with you. Be early to your interview, but not too early. I always have the phrase, if you're not 15 minutes early, then you're late. And that is an appropriate assessment for time. But if you're 45 minutes early for the interview, then it just looks like you forgot what time you're supposed to be here, so you just sat out and camped out all day. So, and a lot of times when you come in and you tell the receptionist, hi, I'm here to meet with so-and-so for an interview, and it's like, oh, well, your interview is not for another 45 minutes, then they give that information to their superior and say, oh, so-and-so's here. Oh, already? Okay, now they feel like they have to rush their time. And you don't want them to feel like they're rushed. So the appropriate time is to be 15 minutes early. Make sure if you brush your teeth and, take a little mint or something like that, you're relaxed and you're ready to go. Make sure you get a good night's sleep beforehand as well. When it comes to the actual interview, you want to focus on your experiences. A lot of companies now use what's called behavioral interviewing. And this is how they weed out people who do not tell the truth on resumes. We know it happens. I always tell you, like I said, tell the truth. But people do not tell the truth a lot of times on resumes. The only way you could really find out is by forcing them to tell you what they did. And I don't mean explain to me how you were working for, X, Y, and Z company. Well, no, they're going to ask you, tell me a time when you had a difficult situation with an employee and you had to discipline them. And then you have to give them that information. And so really think about all your experiences and try to think of negative things and positive things to say. Also, think about your strengths and your weaknesses. Of course, telltale question everyone always says is, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And of course, everyone says, oh, I don't think I have any weaknesses. That's not true. Certainly, I say if you have a weakness, try to find a way to make it a positive. So say, oh, I have a weakness, I gossip too much. Like, no, don't say that. Say, you know what, I do get really close to my associates, and, but I also think it's a strength because it makes them come to me and feel comfortable with me, and I work with them very well. So make sure if you do have to give those weaknesses that you're able to twist into a positive. And lastly, and this is for anything, your mother always told you this, especially when you got presents for your birthday, to send your thank you notes. And that's one thing that I feel still has not changed to this day. Now, some people are different, especially if they're going green or whatever. You could send an email and thank you notes. That's fine as well. But always follow up. Don't just leave them with nothing, So like the next day, send a little email. If you want to send a note card, that's fine as well. I love note cards because I'm a traditional type person. But emails work as well. And just, thanking the interviewer for their time, for their insight and information, and that you can't wait to hear, what decision they make, and thank them again for considering you. And last, I forgot to mention one more thing when it comes to experiences. Having questions is good as well. Not too many questions and not so many evasive questions. Certainly asking questions about salary and whatnot. I would refrain from asking about that at that time, but that's me personally. It's a little hit or miss. Sometimes people feel like it's appropriate to ask that. To me, it's like it gives the idea that your focus is on the money, which we all know that's what people work for, but nonetheless. But, ask your questions based on your research. Like, hey, what are you guys going to... I heard that you're building a new building on blah, blah, blah street. Explain to me how... I want to know how that's going to affect what I'm doing now. If that, what that new position that is interesting, how would that person who takes on this role will be affected in it? And it makes them feel like you're really invested and you care about it. Not to say that you're not already, but, gives them that idea that you are. But once again, like I said, always end with your thank you notes, and that leaves them at the top of their brain. So, with that, I'm a little winded, and I did a lot of talking, but I hope all of the information was very helpful. Just to recap some of the websites. Jailtojob.com for those people who are trying to get themselves back on their feet. Great website. Indeed.com, another great website for finding jobs. Very, very helpful. Of course, if you're looking for government jobs, usajobs.gov is another great website for government jobs. And just remember, your unemployment office, your Department of Labor office, they are there to help you. And if you're looking for a new job, whether you're unemployed or not, they have resources to them that they can help you find something. So please use those local resources. That's what they're there for. That's what we pay our taxes for. And thank you for sitting and listening to me. Of course, if you have questions that you want answered on my other show, like on another show, please feel free to email it to me at Gina@GinaNicole.com, or you can visit me on Twitter at Sunday Brunch Show. Show spelled SHW at Twitter. Thank you, and see you next week.